Welcome to Teaching That Counts, a podcast dedicated to the teaching and learning of mathematics. We discuss a variety of topics from building thinking classrooms to creating a more equitable math class. I hope that the conversations that I have with my guests help inspire you in your own classroom, school, or district, or if you're a parent like me, with your child's mathematics journey. You can find me via my website, teachingthatcountspodcast.com, or on socials at MyEstisTeach. Thank you again for joining me, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. Well, welcome everybody. This is our first episode of season 2, and I have to tell you, we had such a great first season. We started the season in a book study, and we did the book study for Building Thinking Classrooms in Mathematics by Peter Liljedahl. Had a group of teachers, and we came together to talk about each chapter, what we did in the classroom, and really that was such a great way to start a podcast. We talked about their experience, how they were going through using Building Thinking Classrooms as we went throughout the year and adding each of those toolkits in, and really just their experience in transforming their classroom from something that was seated and direct instruction for a long time to just an engaging atmosphere. And I had an opportunity recently to go into some classrooms on just some observation walks, and it's catching fire here. And it's just awesome to see the work that students are putting in, the work that the teachers are putting in, and then to hear from others. They're saying that when they walked in the classroom, what did they see? Well, they saw students engaging, they saw students talking, they saw students doing the math and thinking, and that's what we really wanted. So I'm so excited to see where this goes and how we can move forward in this in season 2. We ended off season 1. Since we started season 1 and we really primarily looked at building thinking classrooms, we ended season 1 with an amazing conversation with Peter Liljedahl himself, where he talked about grouping strategies, student agency and identity, and learning intentions and success criteria. And so how do we build off of this work that we did in our first season? Well, I'm super excited to share with you guys just what's coming up for season 2. In season 2, the focus is going to be on building teacher and student self-efficacy. John Hattie has an effect size of teacher self-efficacy of 1.57, and that's so much greater than 0.4, which is 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. Has such an impact on student growth. And we know that building student self-efficacy really helps them build confidence and growth in mathematics. And that's what really matters, right? Is really, can we get students to leave class not afraid of math, liking math, sometimes, most of the time, and just build their confidence. And on top of that, how do we build teacher confidence through looking at practices and research? So to do that, we're going to have some great guests on this season. I'll continue conversations with coaches, with teachers, with students. I'm excited about having some students on this season and get to hear from them and how they're doing and what they're thinking and, what's going on in the heads of students. How are they feeling about math class this year? We'll talk to some admin, and we'll see how can we expand on the journey that teachers have been on this last year. And we'll get an update from our Building Thinking Classroom group that was in the book study last year. We'll get a couple updates, see how those things are going. And we'll talk with all of these guests about how we can build teacher and student self-efficacy in our class. Oh, and I've got some great special guests coming for this season of Teaching That Counts. So make sure you stay tuned for some great guests I have lined up this year. In this podcast, we're going to start with a conversation that I have with Sarah Harris and Melanie Roche. Those are our two math coaches with me. That's our math coach team here at the district that I work in. And we're just going to discuss our hopes And our focuses and goals for this year as we begin a new school year with new initiatives, with a new California framework, and what does that look like as we start to roll things out with our teachers. And it's a wonderful conversation. We have a lot of fun, so I hope you enjoy it. Here we go, the start of Season 2, Teaching That Counts. Thanks for listening, everybody. Today, I'm here with the rest of our math coach team, Sarah and Mel, and we're just talking Season 2. So I'm opening, this is my first podcast of the next season. So I thought it'd be a good way just to have a conversation on what we're looking forward to, what are some of our initiatives, and in terms of this podcast, what can we do for the teachers? Like who are some people that I might want to have on the podcast too? I've got some really great people lined up for Season 2. So who wants to start? What are you guys looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to just a fresh start. Not a fresh start, but a continued start from last year. And thinking of all the things that we learned last year and building upon that to make this year a better year of math for our students and for teachers. And having the experiences come to be those that are positive. And positive doesn't always mean fun, but positive means, it's not a horrible thing to be faced with a math challenge. And I really would be nice for students to kind of end the year thinking, math was a struggle or math was hard, but I don't hate it. And something that I listened to today on one of IM's webinars was one of their core beliefs. They went over, they have like 8 or 9 of them. And one of them that they said that kind of stood out more to me today, thinking about where we're moving within our district, was that teachers are curious about and trust student thinking to drive learning. And I think for me, that statement, if someone would have told me that like 10 years ago in teaching, that would have been a scary statement to think about, being curious about what the students think and use that to drive instruction, because it was such a direct instruction teaching model, and it was more telling the students what they needed to know rather than listening to what they do know and building upon that. So I think this year that statement's really going to hold true. We have some PD planned coming up for 7 or 8 of our elementary school sites, and I think that we're really going to learn, how can I use that? How can I hone in on their thinking and really use that to help drive their learning and instruction?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think that one of the things we're doing here in our district is really looking at, can we get kids thinking, right? We really want them out of their seats. We want them communicating, and they don't always have to be out of their seats, but I know that we've been talking a lot about how do we get the kids really talking to each other and discussing, and some of the techniques and things that I know you guys have been working on for years with this district. Some, at least at the secondary level, are finally going, oh, that's how we get them to really talk to one another. And so I'm encouraged, especially to see how the little ones have been moving up over the years and all the work that you've done, and now getting into the high school. How can we continue that momentum? How about you, Sarah? What are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to mostly the weekends. No, I'm just kidding. Not really. I do love the weekends. I think I'm looking forward to seeing everything finally come together. I feel like we've had bits and pieces, and now this is the year to have it all come together. So we have our illustrative mathematics curriculum, which transfers into open up into the high school. And we have our proficiency scales now aligned to the curriculum. We have our scope and sequence aligned with pacing and our proficiency scales. And I feel like now I'm looking forward to seeing it all come together and making an impact in the classrooms and for our students. Now that we have all the resources out there, I'm looking forward with Melanie to get back into the mathematics. I think that's where our love is actually being in classrooms and doing the mathematics and sharing that love of learning. So yeah, I'm really excited for this year.
Yeah, I feel like over the last couple of years, we've been doing a lot of, I felt like we were doing a lot of the background stuff.
Unit planning?
Yeah, unit planning. We are doing proficiency scales. I don't know, it's just been a lot of background stuff. And I've been able to work with a few teachers already individually. And I'm super excited about getting in the classroom and helping teachers out, supporting them. And just, even if it's just to go in and co-teach. or just be there to, I don't know, to answer a question with a question, of course, for a student.
Well, and seeing those unit plans come into practice now, I think, with our concept days and our lesson study days and actually being in the classrooms and seeing how those can come to fruition now that we've done the planning. What does it look like in the classroom with students?
Yeah, I love the mindset in this school district. So my kids go to a different school district, and one of my son's teachers moved from Ceres to his school, and I could just, there's something, as going through back to school night, I'm listening to the teacher talk about what they're doing, and my son talk about his experience so far in the class. He loves the teacher, and I just like, this is a great. Not saying all the other teachers aren't great teachers, because we've got a ton of great teachers in the Valley, but there's just something that I know that is special about Ceres and the teachers that are really embracing a lot of the things that we work with. So, and I mean, I feel like that's an appreciation on our coaching team, on just the mindset shifts that we've been working on over the last couple of years. So, and my kid loves it. I mean, he's just loving. He said to me, not a while back, but he says the best thing about junior high is to have science every day. So I'm a math teacher, and I love, I like math every day. But when you're in elementary school, I guess you don't get science every day. Is that?
No.
Oh, that's too bad.
Not yet. Maybe.
I'm thinking it's happening soon.
Maybe we're going to get closer to
so
more science. Well, that's a matter of opinion. I like it better than ELA and history for sure.
See, it's like 4th on my list.
Science?
Yeah.
Oh, it's like second.
ELA second. No history than ELA.
I hate reading.
So much fun.
Yeah.
But what I wanted
That's
to comment...
why they're audiobooks, right?
I don't do audiobooks either. That's why there's Melanie.
That's why there's Melanie.
Cliff Notes Melanie. Thank you.
One thing I do want to comment, though, is over the last, I've been math coach now, it's my 8th year, 7th year as math coach, 8th year as a coach, is bringing these things to the district and going to the conferences and the mindset shift, and teachers just taking these ideas and running with them, especially in the K-6 world that we see. They just do it. They want to try. They notice that, if it's not working, how can we make it work? How can we do better for our kids? And just the amount of momentum that we have seen over, though we might not have seen it initially, we definitely see it now. We went to a conference. Was it May the 3 of us went to the Joe Buller conference? And we were sitting there doing the task and things like that. And it's just like, we've been to one before, but sitting there with the perspective of, we have like 6 years, 5 or 7 years under our belt of doing this, seeing the growth that our district has made from the first one we went to now. And that is in part thanks to the work that the teachers are doing out there and the students are doing out there to make mathematics an enjoyable experience for students and not just book math, as we call it.
Yeah. Let's talk about that task real quick, because I remember how we were on the same table, but we were split up into 2 different groups. And I remember how I remember how the group that I was with just so happened to end up being like a high school-ish group. Mm-hmm. And I'm not quite sure if that was the same in your group. But I know that when we were looking at the task, even though the task seemed to be elementary, it really was able to go all the way. I mean, we were taking out we had Desmos out, and we were like trying to figure out some calculus and max and mins, and I don't think that's the approach that you guys took.
I was trying to figure out why you were taking out the calculators. I'm like, I thought we were just looking at this right now, but...
We were cutting and taping and made lots of boxes to compare the volumes. So yeah, I mean, we were doing our thing.
We got to the graphing in the end.
We did. Yeah.
We definitely took the model. We had fun playing with our models.
I'm curious now what grade level or grade span that task was.
That was a good task, though. I can see that one being done.
I want to say 3rd through 12th.
3rd through 12th,
or 5th through 12th. Would have been one of those 2.
And that's what's great about those tasks and doing them is we have the opportunity to see a task being done at the 3rd grade level, and then we have the opportunity to see the task being done at a 9th grade level.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see what the 3rd graders can do, because when they get to 9th grade, they're just going to be able to build on that. And seeing that they're able to do some of this stuff, the language might be different or the terminology might be different, but what they come up with is very much mirrored to what we see with ninth graders, but they're just adding on the connections and the vocabulary as they go up through the grade levels. So,
I know talking to you guys about the importance, and there's research that shows this, the importance of knowing how to do the math, like understanding the math. But I think that there's so much importance of knowing that span of like what's coming, what did the kids do before and what are they doing next? But not so much just, like if I was teaching fourth grade, which I would never teach fourth grade because I'm a high school teacher, but let's just, for an example, fourth grade. Although,
you might end up in a fourth grade class one day.
I ended up
kindergarten is one of my favorite places to teach now.
I ended up subbing third grade, and it was such a really interesting experience for a high school teacher to be in a third grade class. They're a lot of fun. The kids are a lot of fun. It's just things you take for granted, like, in high school, there's passing periods. And so students go and then they come into your class and
you
go
switch
into
kids.
Class. And you switch kids, right?
Ones all day.
And in elementary school, you don't. You keep the same kids the whole time. So it's quite an experience. But anyway, if I was, if it was in a fourth grade class, knowing what they did in third grade and knowing what they are going to do in fifth grade is a huge advantage to help you understand the mathematics that you're teaching in fourth grade. But I also think knowing where it's going in seventh and in eighth can help you think about where they're going to eventually end up. And if you're in 10th grade, I was talking to a 10th grade teacher, and the 10th grade teacher was talking about, they did those area models in second and third grade. Yeah, this is what they do in multiplication division. So how can we connect division in their elementary experience with long division of polynomials in their high school experience? And knowing those connections is, I feel, pretty powerful.
I think that has to go back. I think going forward, but then also we need to look back too, because how fractions is represented, this is an example, in third, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, it's completely different than I learned it when I was in elementary school. Reducing fractions, not a thing anymore. Simplifying a fraction to lowest terms for an answer, not a thing anymore. So understanding that what the students are coming with and what they're learning at the high school, when they get to high school, might look different in terms of what the standards actually have students do and their expectations. So I think, that's a lot of information you have to hold in your brain though. But I think it would be good to kind of just look at that coherence. What are the major things? And that's some of the work that we're going to start doing this year at the elementary school level. We are going to be looking at spans of learning to help support that idea of where are they here when they start with me and where are they going, but also where are they coming from. So,
and always talking about those F words in math: fractions, functions, all
factoring,
all the fun ones. And Mel mentioned earlier, and we kind of all talked about it, like this is a big year. There's a lot coming together, and having teachers that are willing to make those risks. And what was your quote about failure?
Failure is feedback. I heard that today in my webinar.
So I just think failure is feedback, that we're not going to know what's working and what's not until we try. And having that appreciation for teachers out there willing to take those risks, willing to fail, willing to learn. And I really appreciate that. And also want to give a shout out to our intervention teachers and Mel for working with
lots of work.
Mel working with intervention teachers, and they've really supported what's going on in classrooms, and they've done a lot, and I think that's great too.
So from looking at all the people we've mentioned, it seems like it's like that whole village idea to help support this. It's not just one entity in the story of mathematics. It's going to take this team of people that we have, and we actually have the opportunity to have this great team of support within our school system to help, make students have enjoyable experiences with mathematics and want to continue with mathematics. Sorry, Abel, did I steal Did I steal the closing thought?
No.
Do we have a
not
closing
not
thought?
Not a closing.
Not on the close.
Closing thought on this.
Oh.
But that mathematical agency is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's not as important as in the students. It's so much more important in the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I've had teachers in my past.
Clearly, we all know how I feel about ELA. So
there you go, right?
It's important to know how you feel about math as a teacher.
Well, I've had situations where I've had family members have kids in school, and the teacher just doesn't do math. And it's like fourth grade. They just skip math time because the teacher themselves wasn't comfortable with the mathematics. So, you got to have the agency in the teacher as well as the agency in the students. And we know from research that that's a huge, huge indicator of whether the students can succeed later on is their mathematical agency. So I'm pretty excited about that work that we're doing. Let's talk about another F word in math.
Yes.
Framework.
I was trying to guess which one I was going to say.
Which one? The one we always use? No. So California Framework was adopted this summer.
Hallelujah. About
right?
time. It's done. Yay.
We've been waiting for this for, 4 years? I can't even remember.
A long time.
It's hard to remember with COVID years in the mix there.
I started reading the first draft in 2020, at the beginning of the school year of 2020. I remember.
Yeah. So we're in 3 years in here.
Mm-hmm.
How much of a shift do you think it's going to take for teachers for this new framework?
Well, I'm not worried at all.
Me either.
Are you?
I think we've really laid the groundwork, especially with like instructional routines and number talks and splat and which one doesn't belong, and all of these just instructional routines that our teachers, I think, were comfortable with and have been using. And now they're being called out in the framework. So I think that's a big piece of it. I feel like we're already front runners in knowing all of those things, and all the work we've done with collaboration and working together and journaling and identity and agency and working with ELD Principle 1, ELD Principle 2, discourse. I think that all is now coming out in the framework that our teachers are familiar with. So I don't see it as a huge shift.
No, I think the chart with the little spirally thing broken down into the, what are they called? The dots, the little connection things? I mean, we have to explain that.
Yeah, the content connections and the
that
thing.
thing.
Can't we just say it's a circly thing with the dots?
The
It's done.
That's something that's going to, like the connections. But I feel like with the work that we've been doing with proficiency scales, that work also kind of aligns to making the connections with within mathematics. And so, I mean, our names might be a little bit different headings, but it's also something Sarah and I referenced when we were doing the proficiency scale. So it's going to be something that kind of ties in. So.
Yeah. I feel like the shift is going to be tougher in secondary than it is in elementary. And I've read in reading some articles that elementary teachers kind of see this as a natural connection to the science standards that were introduced not too long ago. So, but math in secondary land has that's the only thing that they've been doing is mathematics. And so I think that there's going to be some, I don't know if it's culture shock or pedagogy shock or just some shock. We've been working on this for years here in our district. And I know that the efforts that we've been working on with our secondary teachers and the change in the curriculum has really got us moving towards the direction of the framework. So I think we're like you said, sir, I think we're ahead of the game. But I do see that I think it's going to be a tougher shift to make in secondary than it is in elementary. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
I would probably agree with that. Mel's reading.
Yes.
Mel's reading.
Yeah.
Well, I heard something. See, I'm going back to my webinar. I think it's just a shift of how we teach. I think the shift of how we teach mathematics has to look different. If we know something's not working, why are we still doing the thing that's not working when we know that we can do better? And sometimes that's frustrating because we've been doing something a certain way for a while and that's how we learned it. But when we look at the data, when we look at the achievement gaps in subgroups and things like that, something has to be done to change that. And if we know there's practices out there that could work, let's take these theories and put them into practice and try and see if that works. And I think that is going to take a mindset shift to see that different can be better. Doing something different can have a better experience. It is hard to go from a role, I think, to the teller of knowledge and the holder of knowledge to the facilitator of the knowledge that's there. That does take some time. I know from my own experience doing that, it took a while. So I'm hopeful. I hope the experience that my daughter, she's in 4th grade now, has when she gets into high school math is going to be one where she is able to expand upon her ideas and her classmates' ideas and formulate.
Well, what's the one thing we heard Joe Bowler say that we all kind of resonated with us is if all the work looks the same, then it's not theirs. So for me, if I'm in a classroom and seeing student work and it all looks the same, whose work really is it if they're the ones that are supposed to be building on those ideas?
Because you can only get through life to a point with mimicking what other people have showed you. But I think the key skills are being able, those math practices, being a problem solver, being able to make a model of something, being able to justify your thinking and construct viable arguments. Those are really the skills, I think, that are the essence of the math content standards of what students are going to need.
Yeah, I heard the one who's doing the math is the one who's learning the math. So if we're spending the teacher's spending all the time doing the math, who's actually learning it?
I think that goes back to the original thing with IAM's beliefs of teaching and learning, what you just said, that teachers are curious about and trust student thinking. That's a scary thought, to have that shift for me. If I'm telling, I have that control. But if I'm curious about what you think, because I've heard some things that people think when I'm in a classroom sometimes, and when you open things up sometimes, and you have to figure out how to control the conversation to get to the mathematical goal and the point. So I think that having that trust in student thinking is going to be something that you have to build a trust. You have to build a trust to see how that's going to work within any relationship. So,
yeah, so true. And I just remember what that quote was. So Peter Lilda actually says it in Building Thinking Classrooms. He says, if what we were doing was working, then we would see a bunch of thinkers. We would see all kids succeeding. We would see and it's like we just don't see success. The National Assessment of Educational Progress doesn't have the U.S. ever increasing mathematical scores. Not that we want to use assessments as baseline data, but if it's working, so that these techniques, the classic techniques, have been working for some. Some of us went through school and we're like, yeah, we're great at math. This really works for us. But that's not the majority. I think there was a statistic. I think Joe Bowler might have said this. What is it? 15 to 20% of kids go on to do something that needed calculus. What's going on with the 80%? Mm-hmm. And how are we serving that 80%? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm with you. I think it's time. I think it was time a long time ago, but it's nice for the framework to actually call it out and really get us on the right track. And what California does really pushes the rest of the country to do some things because of textbooks. That's going to be the biggest thing to come out of this framework, is the way that textbooks are written. Soon we'll see that. So, great discussion today. I'm looking forward to, I'm doing a book study, which I know that Sarah loves book studies.
I do not.
But I'm doing a book study with some teachers this year on the book, The Imperfect and Unfinished Math Teacher by Chase Orton. It's a pretty amazing book about professional development and how to really make it meaningful for teachers. So I'd love to get a group of teachers that want to go through some of this professional development in this book. I would love to have him on the podcast. Hopefully that will be somebody that I can get for season 2. And I also hope that this year, the three of us can meet like this and have a couple of episodes in this podcast where we just talk about how things are going and what we see going on in our district and what we see kind of happening all around us in terms of math ed. Mel and Sarah, thank you for being here. Do you have any last moments?
Thanks for having us.
Mm-hmm. Last moments. Did I say last moments?
No, I have some last.
I said, do you have last moments?
I'm thinking of continuing.
Last thoughts. All right. Well, thanks again, and we'll see and we'll talk to everybody soon.